Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is AsifQureshi and you are watching Dr. Asif Lectures. Today we are going to discuss about fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are 4 in number: vitamin A, D, E and K. And since they are called fat-soluble, so the word is self-explanatory. That basically means that they are absorbed in your digestive tract as chylomicrons basically. So anything which goes wrong with fat absorption in the digestive system will affect the absorption of all these vitamins, okay? So this is important point to remember right from the very beginning, that if there is anything wrong, any pathology where there is problem with the fat absorption mechanism, for example, if there is celiac disease, for example, if there is steatorrhea for any cause, say for example cholestatic jaundice, so things whatever affecting fat absorption from the small intestine, from your GI tract, absorption of these vitamins will be disturbed. This is why it is important to remember that whenever you are dealing with a patient with fat malabsorption, think about fat-soluble vitamin deficiencies, okay? So that's very important to have things in context. So we are going to discuss today in detail fat-soluble vitamins. If you have not subscribed my channel and you are a new viewer here, I request you to please subscribe the channel so that you receive updated videos frequently, and also hit the bell icon so that you receive the notifications. Let's begin the discussion today. So we are going to talk about vitamin A next. Vitamin A basically exists in 3 biochemical forms. They are called retinol, retinal, and retinoic acid. So the difference between them is the functional group. The basic skeleton remains the same for all 3 of them, but if the functional group is an alcohol group, it is called retinol, and it can be oxidized to another functional group, and if it becomes an aldehyde, it is now known as retinal, and if it is further oxidized, it is known as retinoic acid. And you see the double arrow here, the double-headed arrow, this basically means that retinol and retinal are, that's a reversible reaction. So retinol can be converted into retinal and retinal can be converted back into retinol, but once they are converted into retinoic acid, that's an irreversible, that does not come back to retinal or retinol, okay? So these are the 3, you need to remember, these are the 3 normal biochemical existence of vitamin A, okay? Now vitamin A sources, you have to remember, they have animal sources as well as plant sources. In animals, you found them in huge quantities in liver, milk, butter, cheese, egg yolk, and fish oil. In plants, they are present in the form of beta carotenes, okay? Particularly in carrots and red fruits and green leafy vegetables. And beta carotene is basically composed of different units of retinol. So in your digestive tract, the carotene is, finally converted into retinol, and then retinol is absorbed into your circulatory system. So the very basic stuff about vitamin A. How many biochemical structures existing in nature? 3. Retinol, retinal, and retinoic acid. Animal sources, from here. Plant sources, from here. And you remember that in plants, vitamin A is present as beta carotene, which is ultimately cleaved into your gastrointestinal tract, and retinol is produced, which you absorb finally, okay? Now, what are the major functions of vitamin A? Why vitamin A is important? So, 2 major functions you must remember, and then a third one which is a supplementary, which is good for very good students, okay? Now, first one is the vision. Vitamin A is important for normal vision cycle, and we'll discuss this in a little more detail, that what exactly vitamin A performs as far as vision is concerned. But here, remember, I told you there are 3 different forms of vitamin A: retinol, retinal, and retinoic acid. Out of those 3, retinal is the one which is, and also in its cis form. So these are different geometrical configurations. There is a trans form, which is pretty much a straight form, and then there is a bended form, which is called the cis form. So the cis form of retinal is actually responsible for the vision function of vitamin A. And where does that happen? In the rods and cones of retina. We'll discuss that in more detail, okay? So first function of vitamin A you have to remember is vision. The second one is cellular proliferation. And which biochemical structures of vitamin A are involved in this? They are retinol and retinoic acid. So this is very important. Sometimes they ask in your boards exam in MRCP or FCPS, also in MBBS or PharmD papers, they do ask this, that which form of vitamin A is responsible for what function. So you have to remember that retinal in the cis form has, important role in vision, and retinol and retinoic acids are involved in cell proliferation and growth, and we'll discuss how do they perform these functions. And the third one is that derivatives of vitamin A are also cofactor in synthesis of a lot of glycoproteins. So basically 3 functions that you have to remember for vitamin A. First one is normal vision, second one is cellular proliferation, and the third one is cofactor for synthesis of glycoproteins. Okay, so far so good. Now, how does it perform cell proliferation function and how does it perform the vision function is the next discussion bit. Now, if you see, so here's the story. You take vitamin A in your diet and it goes in your intestine and it is absorbed as, the fat absorbing other vitamins in the small intestine, upper small intestine. It is absorbed in the blood, and via the blood, it reaches a cell where it has to, say for example, epithelial cell, the mucous membrane cell, where it has to perform its proliferation function. So retinol, which you absorb in your GIT, is now entering into the cell, and in the cell it is being oxidized into first retinal and then into retinoic acid. And once the retinoic acid is produced, it goes and binds to the zinc finger protein. Now zinc fingers, they are important, we'll discuss that in another video. So they are important transcription machinery factors. So they go into the DNA and it starts the process and activates the process of transcription, as a result of which messenger RNAs are produced. So the job of retinol is getting into the cell, being converted into retinoic acid, and the retinoic acid binds to the transcription factors, zinc family in this particular case, which then activates messenger RNA synthesis. Now, messenger RNA synthesis of which proteins? Of the proteins which are responsible for proliferation. So, basically, if you look at this, vitamin A in this particular case is actually working like a hormone, a fat-soluble hormone. You remember how do, for example, cholesterol hormones work? Cortisol, it gets inside the cell and activates transcription. Vitamin D also works in the same fashion. So vitamin A also works in the same fashion. It gets into the cell, converts itself into retinoic acid, which binds to the zinc proteins, zinc family members of transcription factors, zinc finger-like proteins, and then messenger RNA of those proteins are generated, upregulated, which are responsible for cell proliferation and growth. Okay, so in this fashion, it controls cell growth and cell proliferation, and it is actually essential. So in vitamin A deficiency, epithelial turnover is disturbed. Mucous membranes becomes dry and disturbed. Okay, so this is an important function, and you should remember the mechanism. How does it work? Gets into the cell, activates the transcription machinery. Okay, so it is basically acting like a fat-soluble hormone in this particular case. Okay, how does it control the vision pathway? Vision, so here is a cell of retina, say for example a rod cell, and the blue thing here you see is an opsin protein. So retinal, remember I told you the vision function is controlled by the cis form of retinal. So retinal binds with this blue thing, and the combined structure is now known as rhodopsin. So retinal binds with the protein, which is the 7-pass receptor, and the combined structure of what? Retinal plus opsin is known as rhodopsin. So basically, vitamin A in the retinal cells combined with the protein to produce a structure which is called rhodopsin. Now see what is the job of the rhodopsin. Rhodopsin is basically the receptor for the light activity, for the light photons. So it receives the light and then activates a pathway. And because of that activation, the optic nerve cells are stimulated and you start visualizing. If vitamin A, retinal, is not present, light will still come, but you will not be able to start or kick-start the mechanism downstream. So if the mechanism downstream is not started, although light is there, but you will not be able to properly see this. And this will lead to, pathology. And this is very important. We will discuss this. So the job of vitamin A in eye is to bind with a protein called opsin to produce rhodopsin. And see what happens. When light triggers, here the levels of cyclic GMP will be reduced, okay? As a result, sodium channels will be closed and hyperpolarization will happen, which will lead to reduced amount of glutamate. So in resting condition, the retinal cells, the rod cells, they are slightly polarized, okay? Up to minus 30 millivolts, they are slightly polarized. So as a result, persistent glutamate is being released. And that glutamate inhibits the synaptic mechanisms in the optic nerve. So because of the persistent release of glutamate in resting condition, that visualization mechanism is not active. So what happens in light? As soon as light is there, glutamate levels go down. And once the glutamate levels go down, the inhibitory factor is gone, and now you start seeing things. So that is the job of retinal in the presence of light, makes you see. This is very important pathway. So bottom line, you should understand what are the functions of vitamin A? Cell proliferation and growth. And this is how it does it. The other very important function is maintenance of vision. And how does it do? Retinal combines with a protein called opsin, and they make rhodopsin. And when light hits, it reduces cyclic GMP, reduces glutamate, inhibitory signal is lost, and you start seeing. Okay? So that's what the basic concept of how it controls vision mechanism. Now, what happens if there is no vitamin or deficiency of vitamin A? Vitamin A deficiency, obviously the first thing you see is night blindness. Why? Because in the night you need more and more vitamin A to see appropriately in less light which is present there. So if vitamin A is not there, this is the first thing you basically see, that people have troubles seeing properly in the night time. Okay, so night blindness, and then a series of problems start, which includes conjunctival xerosis, there is drying of conjunctiva, mitotic spots appear in eye, corneal dryness and corneal ulcers and corneal inflammation, and cornea becomes brittle and soft and inflamed, and this condition is known as keratomalacia. So osteomalacia, where there is problem with the bone mineralization, so it becomes soft. Yeah, so same thing here. The cornea, because of repeated dryness, infection, edema, it becomes brittle and soft. And this term is called keratomalacia. If this happens repeatedly, it can also lead to corneal scarring, fibrosis, okay, and xenophthalmic fundus. So you also have to remember that vitamin A deficiency is a major cause of blindness, particularly in young children throughout the world, and it is one of the leading preventable causes of blindness. So if vitamin A is provided efficiently, this blindness can be stopped, it can be prevented. Okay, so this is something serious, that's a fatal deficiency. You have to remember that vitamin A, if this is deficient, is a major health burden. Okay, so that's an important bit. Now, how do you basically diagnose vitamin A deficiency? Is by the clinical features. Night blindness is a major complaint, and corneal problems and scarring and ulcers and inflammation. So you think about vitamin A. Also think about whenever there is protein energy malnutrition. So if you see a baby with generalized features of protein energy malnutrition, think about there may be associated vitamin deficiencies. So if a baby is protein caloric malnutrition or protein energy malnutrition, think about vitamin A deficiency, okay? And one of the important things which contributes toward the diagnosis, basically, you can check vitamin A levels in blood as well, but if you prescribe vitamin A and the patient responds, that's also a very good contributory signal that this was vitamin A deficiency, okay? How do you manage it? You can give per oral vitamin A supplements. The dosages are here, and if there is a secondary cause, say for example protein energy malnutrition, you should treat that. Once that is treated, vitamin A absorption will be improved and things will be better, okay? How can you prevent it? Nowadays in Western world, there is a lot of fortification of early diet with vitamin A, and vitamin A supplements are also given also in our country here. Whenever a child goes to measles vaccination at many centers, vitamin A supplements are given at that time as well to prevent vitamin A deficiency. So overall, if we repeat, vitamin A exists in three forms: retinol, retinal, retinoic acid. Retinol and retinoic acid are important for cell proliferation. How does it do it? It enters the cell, converts into retinoic acid, binds to zinc fingers, and by binding to zinc fingers, activates transcription, and a lot more messenger RNA is produced, and that messenger RNA increases the amount of proteins for proliferation. Okay, and how is the vision controlled? By retinal. Cis form of the retinal binds with opsin, produces rhodopsin in the presence of light. Cyclic GMP is reduced, glutamate is reduced ultimately because of hyperpolarization, and inhibitory signal is relieved so that you start seeing. Remember these bits, okay? What does it cause is particularly eye problems, night blindness, scleral, conjunctival problems, corneal problems, keratomalacia, these sort of things, okay? It's a major cause of blindness in children throughout the world, and we discuss the diagnosis, management, and treatment. So, another very important thing you need to understand about vitamin A is the adverse effects of vitamin A excess, okay? So remember that retinol is teratogenic. This is teratogenic. So you have to be very, very cautious if you are using vitamin A in pregnant females or even in females with childbearing age. So this is very important to remember. Most of the times, you know, when these females of reproductive age, they come to you with pimples and stuff, many physicians prescribe isoretinoin, which is a vitamin A supplement, very active form of vitamin A. So that may lead to teratogenic effects. Remember this, okay? See, even it doesn't look much, but even more than 3 milligrams, which is approximately twice the RDA for vitamin A during pregnancy, is a no-no. So you have to be very, very careful that in pregnancy, vitamin A has to be given with great care, okay? And if there is high intake, probable signs can be liver damage, bone damage, hair loss, double vision. Important thing also to remember here is that beta carotene is not toxic. Beta carotene is not toxic. Retinol is, beta carotene is not. So good news is that you can have a lot of carrots during pregnancy, still being safe, okay? Let us now discuss another very important fat-soluble vitamin, which is vitamin D, and you have an idea when I talk about sun, because that has an important role in production of vitamin D in your body, okay? So what basically happens in skin, you have this molecule called 7-dehydroxycholesterol, and this cholesterol, when acted upon by sunlight, leads to formation of CCF. It's not congestive cardiac failure, it's cholecalciferol, which is also called the vitamin D3 initial form. This vitamin D3 is also obtained via diet. Salmon fish is a big source of vitamin D3, okay? And this vitamin D3 goes to your liver. In the liver, there is a hydroxylase enzyme called 25-hydroxylase, which causes 25-hydroxylation. And as a result of this vitamin D3 is produced. This is inactive, but it is the major storage form of vitamin D in your body. This is also the form which you test in the biochemical testing laboratory. So when we talk about vitamin D levels, this is the vitamin that you are actually talking about, okay? But this is inactive, cannot perform its action. Now, this vitamin goes to the proximal convoluted tubules of your nephron, and there is another enzyme sitting and waiting for 25-hydroxy D3, that is vitamin D3, and that enzyme is called 1-hydroxylase. So it performs 1-hydroxylation. So the product which is produced is now 125 dihydroxy, obviously vitamin D3. This is active form of vitamin D. So here is the summary again. There is sunlight which acts upon cholesterol molecule to produce CCF, and which is also present in the diet, okay? The vitamin D3, it goes to liver for 25-hydroxylation. It goes then to kidney, proximal convoluted tubule, for another hydroxylation step, which is 1-hydroxylation, and the product now is the active form of vitamin D, which is 125-dihydroxy. So also known as calcitriol. So after it comes out from the kidney, proximal convoluted tubule cells, this is the active vitamin D, and it can now perform its action. Now, it is very important to remember that proximal convoluted tubule associated hydroxylation of vitamin D is very well regulated. It is enhanced by high PTH, and it is also enhanced if the phosphate levels are low. Now, we have in detail discussed this in another video that I prepared for parathyroid hormone and calcium regulation. I've given the link of that video in the description of this video so that you can have a look at how parathyroid hormones and how low phosphate increases 1-hydroxylase activity. So calcium goes down, parathyroid goes up, it comes here via the receptor, cyclic AMP production, and 1-hydroxylase activity is enhanced. All this is discussed in detail in the parathyroid video, okay? So I recommend you watch that video if you have not watched it already. Anyhow, so once this calcitriol is produced, it performs its action. It goes to the gut. In the gut, it enhances the production of cal binding, so more calcium is absorbed, more phosphate is absorbed, and that's thrown into the blood. Now, in the blood, as a result, this is the final result of vitamin D activation. Increase calcium levels in the blood, increase phosphate levels in the blood. So that's the primary mechanism by which vitamin D increases calcium and phosphate levels in the blood. Okay, one more time, let's recap. Vitamin D is produced by the effect of sunlight in your skin, as well as you take it in diet. Salmon fish, I told you, is the major source, okay? So once it's in the skin or via the diet, it goes to the liver for 25-hydroxylation. After which, vitamin D3 comes out, which is the major storage form of vitamin D in your body, but this is inactive. It cannot perform its function, okay? It goes to the proximal convoluted tubules where it is hydroxylated again at one position, another hydroxylation at position number 1, and the product which comes out now is active vitamin D, okay? And this is enhanced by PTH levels, high PTH and low phosphate levels. Now this active vitamin D, calcitriol, you cannot measure usually this because it is a very short half-life. What you measure in the laboratory is the 25-hydroxy cholecalciferol, okay? Which is vitamin D3, inactive form. Now, in the gut, activated vitamin D increases the absorption of calcium and phosphate. So the net result is increase in calcium in the blood, increase in phosphate in the blood, okay? Now vitamin D also has receptors in so many other parts of your body, and there are so many researches that vitamin D also have effects in cardiovascular system, in endocrine system, in other system, but its effects on bone, musculoskeletal system are very well established, okay? So you see, it's a multi-system effect. Vitamin D deficiency has been studied in cardiovascular problems, respiratory, renal, endocrine, cancers, multiple, whatnot. So if you go on PubMed and start searching vitamin D deficiency, you will find that people have researched this vitamin deficiency in so many different disorders, okay? Now, I told you that this is what we measure in the plasma if we talk about vitamin D level. So if a doctor prescribes, you as a doctor prescribe somebody, go check your vitamin D level. So this is the vitamin D that they are talking about, the 25-hydroxylated vitamin D, okay? The inactivated form of vitamin D. And these are the deficiency and severe insufficiency values. These are the cutoffs. Now, two diseases that you have to remember for vitamin D deficiency. One is presented in children, which is called rickets. And rickets, what happens? Decreased mineralization. So if there is no vitamin D, calcium and phosphates are not in the appropriate balance. So the job of vitamin D is to increase calcium, also to increase phosphate. When calcium and phosphate are both there, they precipitate and settle down in the bone. This is what we call mineralization. So vitamin D presence is important for mineralization of bone, okay? The primary action of vitamin D is mineralization of bone. So if vitamin D is not there, calcium is not high, phosphate is not high, they are not in good amounts, no mineralization. So the bone is not mineralized, and in children it becomes, you know, bending bones. So they become bending bones, right? Because they do not have the concrete material, calcium and phosphate mineralization. And the presentations are, they have deformed skull. They also have, you know, palpable nodules type of stuff in their ribs, which is what we call ricketry rosary, and craniotabes, the deformed skull. So in children, rickets. In adults, however, this presents as, again, this is because of low mineralization. The pathology stays the same. But since they are adults, epiphyseal plates have been fused. Now, the normal wear and tear that goes on in the bony system, the new osteoid which is being produced is not appropriately mineralized. So once this is not being mineralized, there are foci in the bone which are not properly mineralized, which means there are pathological fractures and bony pains and all those sorts of things, okay? Also, you need to remember what is the main cause. The main primary cause is low phosphate, because even if, you know, what other thing can increase calcium levels in the blood? Parathyroid. But parathyroid does not increase phosphate levels in the blood. In fact, parathyroid decreases phosphate levels. It's a phosphate trashing or phosphate throwing hormone. So vitamin D is the only thing which increases calcium levels as well as phosphate levels. So this is ideal because we need calcium as well as phosphate for appropriate mineralization. Only if we have appropriate calcium and appropriate phosphate, they will settle down and precipitate, okay? This is what we need. So if vitamin D is not there, So phosphate levels are down and the whole problem goes up, okay? And as I told you, there will be bone pains. Recently in the boards exam, they have been, a lot asking about FGF23, which is associated with tumor-induced osteomalacia. Okay, so if FGF23 is in the list, it's something related with tumor-associated osteomalacia. How do you manage? You obviously, first you give the loading dose, which repletes the vitamin D stores in your body, and then you have maintenance dose, okay? And the dosages are written here, and they are not fixed. You assess vitamin D levels, and according also to the clinical picture, you decide the dose, okay? But these are the standards. Now, vitamin E, very quickly we'll go through vitamin E. There are different forms, around 8 different forms, isoforms of vitamin E that exist in the nature. Alpha tocopherol is the most abundant in our body. More than 90% of the vitamin E that we have is alpha tocopherol, okay? It's present in vegetables, seeds, oils, cereals, and nuts. Actually, liver sources are very, very few. Animal sources are very, very few, but plant sources are by and large the major source of vitamin E for us, okay? Daily requirement depends upon how much polyunsaturated fatty acids you consume, because this is an antioxidant. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. So if somebody is consuming a lot of polyunsaturated fatty acids in their diet, they need a lot of vitamin E in their diet. Therefore, the daily recommended dose depends upon the intake of polyunsaturated fatty acids, okay? An important point to remember. So it's an antioxidant against peroxides, superoxides, oxygen-free radicals, and it stabilizes the plasma membranes, okay? Otherwise, the reactive oxygen species may kill and may disturb the structure of plasma membranes. And there have been some reported deficiencies which leads to hemolytic anemias and some neurological deficits, particularly ataxia, okay? That's all you need to remember about vitamin E. Now, a little bit more detail about vitamin K. Vitamin K exists in these 2 particular forms at least, vitamin K1 and K2. K1 is known as phytoquinone, which is present in the plant products basically. You see the green leafy vegetables and dairy products and soybean oils. And vitamin K2 is, the name is menaquinone. It is basically produced inside your gut by the bacteria. Now here is an important point. Anything which depletes the bacteria, vitamin K2 production is gone. So for example, if you are taking long-term antibiotics will deplete the vitamin production, vitamin K2 production, okay? So that's an important thing to remember. And as for other fat-soluble vitamins, this is also absorbed in the upper small intestine, okay? Now, what's the job of vitamin K? Now, vitamin K is, so we use a technical terminology for this, which is called gamma carboxylation of clotting factors. Gamma carboxylation. I'll tell you in a detail in a bit that what is gamma carboxylation, what do we mean by gamma carboxylation. So gamma carboxylation of clotting factor. Which clotting factors? Clotting factor 2, 7, 9, 10, and protein C and protein S. Okay, so these are, you have to remember them because in exams they ask a lot about these things. Which clotting factors are basically dependent on vitamin K for their activity? These are protein C and S, clotting factor 2, 7, 9, and 10. Okay. Vitamin K is also important for gamma carboxylation of some bone proteins such as osteocalcin, matrix proteins. So also in the formation of bone, it has a role. So vitamin K deficiency also have some bony problems. Okay, but the major thing they test you in exams is the clotting factors. Which clotting factors? 2, 7, 9, and 10. And protein C and protein S. And what is the job? Gamma carboxylation of these proteins. So in summary, these clotting factors will not work if there is no vitamin K. In order for them to work, they need vitamin K, okay? And what is the job of vitamin K? To produce gamma carboxylation, which we understand here. So here you see there's a circulatory system here in which finally something will dump in, and that big cell is a hepatocyte. Now that hepatocyte, let's see what do we actually mean by gamma carboxylation. In this hepatocyte, this is a ribosome, and there is a messenger RNA which is producing a protein, okay? And that protein, chain of amino acid, say for example here it is prothrombin, clotting factor 2. So say for example this is prothrombin, one of the clotting factors, okay? Now this is being produced, you see, here's the messenger RNA, so ribosome is doing its job, and at the end terminus of this protein, you see this red bit, this is glutamic acid. This is glutamic acid. Okay, and glutamic acid usually can, so that's the structure of glutamic acid. If you see there is a amino group, there is a carbon group, then there is in the center there is a CH. This is the alpha carbon. Carbon attached to alpha carbon is the beta carbon. Carbon attached to beta carbon is the gamma carbon. On the gamma carbon, the last carbon, there is already a carboxylic acid group, COO. Okay, there is already a carboxylic acid group. So what does vitamin K do? What is the job of vitamin K? This is the job of vitamin K. In the presence of vitamin K, see, this is again the ribosome here, the messenger RNA, the protein is being made, but now on the glutamic acid, there is an additional carboxylic acid group. Initially, there was one carboxylic acid group. Now there are two carboxylic acid groups. Now, why this is important? This is important because for clotting factors, these carboxylic acid groups, which are negatively charged, they will bind to calcium to make the clot, to make, hold each other appropriately so that the clotting cascade happens normally. So in order for these clotting factors to work, they need calcium. They need to hold calcium. And in order to hold calcium, they need this additional carboxylic acid group. And where is this carboxylation happening? On the gamma group, and the gamma carbon. Of what? Gamma carbon of the glutamic acid. So this is called gamma carboxylation of the glutamic acid residues. Gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid residues of clotting factors is important for their normal functioning. So once this happens, all this happens, obviously by this enzyme which is called gamma glutamyl carboxylase, additional carboxylic acid group is added. Now this is released into circulation. This clotting factor is now active and it can perform its function. Now imagine a condition when vitamin K is not there. So if vitamin K is not there, additional carboxylic acid group will not be there, and if that group will not be there, clotting factor will still be produced. It will still be produced and it will still be released into the blood, but it will not be functioning properly. It will not be functioning properly. And you know why? Because it will be missing one hand. And what is the job of that hand? To bind with calcium. So with two hands, they hold the calcium very strongly. If one hand is missing, it does not hold calcium strongly, and the clotting problems start, and therefore increase in prothrombin time. It should make sense to you. It should make sense to you, okay? Is that all very clear? I hope it is. One more time, let me repeat it. Vitamin K is important for gamma carboxylation of certain clotting factors. Clotting factor 2, 7, 9, 10, protein C, and protein S. What do we mean by gamma carboxylation? Gamma carboxylation basically means that during the process of protein synthesis, clotting factor synthesis in the hepatocyte, the job of vitamin K is to add additional carboxylic acid group, which is the additional negative charge, on the glutamic acid residue of the newly formed clotting factor. Now, once this additional carboxylic acid group is added, this is active functional clotting factor. It goes into the blood, does its job. Okay. Now, you see, all this is happening when the process of translation is continuing. You see, protein is being made, translation, and also the carboxylic acid group is being added. This is why the mechanism is called co-translational. So this is all co-translational. Translational processes are going on and carboxylic acid groups are being added. Okay, so co-translational modification is an example which we have to remember, that gamma carboxylation is a co-translational modification. Okay, it's not post-translational. Gamma vitamin K process does not work once the protein is made. It only works once the process is in continuity, when the protein is being made, when the protein is in the process of making. Okay, and when there is vitamin K deficiency, you can now turn your head around that if vitamin K is not there, gamma carboxylation will not happen. So inadequate synthesis of clotting factors, they will not be active. As a result of this, increased prothrombin time, because calcium will not be held properly, and clotting time will this prothrombin time will be delayed, which will lead to hemorrhages. Okay, obviously, because the job of the clotting factor is to stop hemorrhage, but if the clotting factors are malfunctioning, hemorrhage will happen. Okay, it should make sense to you. Causes of vitamin K deficiency. Now, it's very common in newborns. Why? Because newborns, number one, they are being fed by mom, so mom's milk, it does not transfer in breast milk. Okay, so they do not get vitamin K from mom's milk. So, and they do not eat anything. So the dietary sources are gone. And then there is poor placental transfer. They did not get it through placenta. They did not get it via milk, via their diet. And what is the other source of vitamin? The intestinal bacteria. And the newborn has a, sterile environment. They do not have bacteria. So they need time to develop bacteria. Therefore, for all these reasons, it is very common that in infants, vitamin K deficiency develops. Okay, so you have to remember that vitamin K deficiency is common in infants, in newborns actually. Whatever the cause of cholestatic jaundice, if there is any obstruction in the bile flow, bile is not coming in the intestine, absorption of fat is disturbed, and I told you in the very beginning of the lecture, whenever absorption of fat is disturbed, absorption of all fat-soluble vitamins is disturbed, okay? As simple as that. Now, prolonged antibiotic therapy, you are killing the bacteria, and once the bacteria are being destroyed, vitamin K production is disturbed, can lead to deficiency, okay? And antagonist, warfarin. Warfarin antagonizes the action of vitamin K. Warfarin antagonizes the action of vitamin K. And this is as simple as that, you have to remember. When you take warfarin, vitamin K functions are disturbed. So warfarin disturbs what clotting factors? 2, 7, 9, and 10 in protein C and protein S, okay? Remember that. And this is how you treat it by intramuscular injection of vitamin K stuff, also can be given per orally. Now, this, I think the last slide where we have to discuss some important points, that what happens if vitamin K is not there, what happens if vitamin C is not there, because they also lead to, vitamin C deficiency also leads to hemorrhage, okay? But you need to remember that vitamin C is a different problem, because that will be a problem with collagen synthesis, and collagen synthesis will be affecting platelet aggregation. So if vitamin C deficiency is there, what will happen in bleeding time and prothrombin time, and what happens when vitamin K is deficient? So look here, vitamin K deficiency, I told you prothrombin time will be increased. Why? Because the prothrombin which is made does not have additional carboxylic acid group. And if it does not have an additional carboxylic acid group, it cannot hold calcium appropriately. Or if it does not hold calcium properly, the prothrombin time will be enhanced. It will take more time, okay? And it will be normal in vitamin C deficiency, because vitamin C has nothing to do with function of prothrombin, okay? Now, bleeding time, which is related with platelet aggregation, will be increased in vitamin C deficiency, but normal in vitamin K deficiency, because vitamin K has nothing to do with collagen synthesis or platelet aggregation, okay? Both of them show with easy bruising and little bit hemorrhages. And in vitamin K, there are no connective tissue problems because they're not involved in collagen synthesis, but vitamin C problem, you do see connective tissue problem, gum stuff and skeletal problems and stuff. And the causes for both of them are also different. Causes for vitamin C deficiency, which is a water-soluble vitamin, are diets basically deficient in vitamin C containing food, which is the citrus food. But for vitamin K, you know that newborns, use of prolonged antibiotics or warfarin, things like that. You know, anything which has fat absorption problem, steatorrhea, cholestatic jaundice, so they have different causes as well. So that you can also ask the patient in history. So this is basically all, you know, 4 vitamins, vitamin A, D, E, and K. For all of them, you have to discuss that what is the existence, what are the structures of each one of them. Vitamin A is retinol, retinoic acid. Vitamin D is, CCF, cholecalciferol, derived from cholesterol, first go to liver for 25. So these sort of the biochemical stuff for each one of them you have to remember. Vitamin E, alpha tocopherol, and vitamin K, K1 in the diet, K2 in the gut. Remember this. So for all vitamins, you have to remember what are their biochemical structures, what are the sources of those vitamins, what are the actions of those vitamins, what happens if the vitamins are deficient, and what happens if the vitamins are in excess. So for all these vitamins, you have to remember these. And once you have done this, you are done. You are done with these vitamins. So this is all for today. I'll come again with a new video, perhaps on other types of different vitamins. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you are updated with the videos. Please share the video with your colleagues, with your friends, with your seniors and juniors. And I'll hopefully see you again with another video. The purpose is to make the medical lecturing and medical education as easy as possible for all the students and absolutely free of cost. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again in another video. Till then, bye-bye.